The following podcast is a Live the Dream Media production.
This podcast is brought to you by Selenia's Custom Creations, your one-stop shop for promotional items. They will customize items for your next event or help you promote your business. They carry all things apparel and anything you can think of to print your logo on. Selenia's Custom Creations made beautiful Skinology Sessions t-shirts for our podcast. They're soft, they're cute, they're well made, and they shipped fast, but the best part is she is Arizona local. Follow them on Instagram and contact them for a quote at Selenia's Custom Creations, LLC. Hi friends, welcome to Skinology Sessions. I'm Marielle.
And I'm Selena.
Let's get right into it. We have a serial entrepreneur in the house. I feel like we're sitting here with Don Vito Corleone himself. Can you introduce yourself for us? Tell us who you are and tell us about your businesses.
I will be glad to. It's first off, my name is Clint Peek. I am a serial entrepreneur, and I am honored and humbled to be on this show with you ladies this morning. This is pretty cool.
Thank you.
Thank you for being on.
Second season. I don't know what episode you're on, and I know I'm only the second guy you've had on here, so that's a privilege. I consider that an honor. I'm a entrepreneur. I was born to it, basically. Currently, I have 6 businesses that I am a part of. The longest tenured one is Copper Creek Cookies that my mother and my wife started in 2005. I joined them in 2008. We've got Fresh Catering, which is an extension of that. We started that in 2010. Top the Other Place, which is our banquet room and meeting room, and LTD Media, which David Samarano and I started 2 years ago. So that's kind of in a nutshell. But I've probably started 40 businesses in my life. A couple of them were successful too, so it kept me moving to the next project.
Very cool. And I want to start by you telling the story of The Godfather, because since you told me to read the book, you told me it changed the trajectory of your
Yes.
life as a
Yeah.
kid. I have been obsessed. You can ask Selena. It's been like Godfather everything.
She had never heard
Yeah.
anything about The Godfather
I'd never read the book and
or seen the movie.
a long time ago, but I'd
Yeah.
never like submerged
yeah.
myself into it as much as I did after you recommended it. So can you tell that story?
It's a cool story.
It's a
Or at
really cool
least I
story.
think it's a cool story for me. I'm a preacher's kid. So I grew up in a little small town in southern Illinois. And life was just Norman Rockwell, for the lack of a better description. It really it was. So my mother, I was in the 7th grade, and my mother, so this would have been roughly the time frame the movie itself came out. I believe the book was published in 1969, but so she bought the book, The Godfather, for me. Good Christian lady bringing home The Godfather to her 12-year-old son. And I remember the first time I read that, like, wow, this other world is out there. Now, I was old enough and knowledgeable enough to note that there were bad things happening in this book, like right away. But I saw it as a family movie. It was a family they were doing some pretty negative things, but just the way the family operated, and it really, again, growing up in Opdyke, Illinois, population 200, and reading this book about old school New York and how it played out and all the things that were going on in the families' lives was just like a game changer. And I remember later on when I got to college, remembering in a business class that the discussion was basically that, like, the mafia is capitalism 101. If you produce, you get to stick around. If you don't produce, you don't get to stick around. And I always felt like not the murder and the mayhem. I want to clear that up real quick. But life itself is kind of that way. If you produce and you're good at something, there's always a spot for you. And if there's not, then you probably need to go back and regroup and find. I'm going to talk about that a little bit as we
Yeah, or
throughout this conversation.
you
But
can make your own path
you've
too.
got to me, and we're getting ready to start a new series here, and we're going to have you ladies on as part of that, and it's called Free Agents because we are free agents if we choose to be.
Correct.
Well, we are whether we choose to be or not. I mean, that's just we're all consistent, all of us, all the time, and everybody's consistent. A lot of people are consistently good at things, and some people are consistently not doing anything, and then other people are consistently making poor choices. That's just the reality of it. And I'm guilty of all three categories, by the way, at various points throughout the day sometimes. But back to The Godfather. It was just such an impactful book for a 12-year-old to read, and I remember a few years later than when it played on HBO because I wasn't nearly old enough to go see an R-rated movie at 12, and I saw it on HBO, and I saw those characters come to life, and it was like, whoa, I know these
Yeah.
people.
But the book is just so much more in depth
It
to
is,
each character.
yeah,
But I found it really, there was a lot of business in there. There was
a
a lot
lot.
of loyalty within
Right,
family.
right,
And the fact that the entire book was based on the author's mom, that's
right.
power. It's about a
What was it?
woman.
Pilgrim's Way, or
Yeah,
I
he had some
forget. Yeah,
other books
yeah, yeah.
before
That's
that.
really a pretty much an accurate true story. And then to follow that up, then 40 years later, after I read the Godfather,
Mhm.
my sister at that time lived down across from the medical center,
UMC.
TMC, and Joseph Bonanno
I was
lived in the
telling her
neighborhood,
this
and I would
because
drive
my
by his house, and he'd be sitting out on the porch, and I'm thinking he was kind of one of the
yeah,
main
they
models,
all
if you were.
relocated to
Yeah,
Arizona. My great
yeah.
grandmother was close because they went to church together.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I feel like I've just scratched the surface on this whole thing, but The Godfather was a super powerful book, and I could see how it influenced
Yeah,
you
yeah,
business-wise, and
yeah,
I think everybody should read
yeah.
it.
Business for if they could somehow like trim it and get rid of some of the stuff that it would take away from the movie and the story, of course. But I mean, just practice on the business principles that are used in there. I use the mafia lingo a lot. La Costa Nostra. This thing of ours is what it means. So this is this thing of ours. It's important. Omerta.
Keep your mouth
Keep your mouth
shut.
shut.
Yeah.
You know,
There was
don't.
a lot of good hot
Yes.
tips in there in The
Yeah.
Godfather.
If you read their 10 Commandments for the mafia, you'd say, well, I'd actually have to agree with all
Yeah.
those. They took it to the next level, and I want to
Yeah.
clarify once and finally, I don't promote the murder, the
No.
mayhem, the criminal behavior at all. But what a great
Yeah,
story.
I'm obsessed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love The Godfather.
Yeah, it is. It's a great.
So I heard from a little birdie that you had involvement within the Major League Baseball
did.
organization.
Yes.
What was it?
Yeah, in 2008, a dear friend of mine, Rick Peralt, who runs Top Choice Baseball, got an incredible program. I'm going to have him on the next series describing that. But he got a phone call from a restricted number on Valentine's Day of 2008, and the guy on the other end said, "Hey, Rick, this is Jerry Reinsdorf. I need to talk to you." And Rick, I won't say quite what he said, but he said something. Yeah, I'm Michael Jordan, and he hung up the phone. And Jerry Reinsdorf, if you're not familiar with it, he owns the Chicago White Sox and the Chicago Bulls, so therefore was Michael Jordan's employer for a number of years. So within a couple of minutes, he gets a call back with the area code and the numbers up, and he's like, "This is really Jerry Reinsdorf, and I need you for a project." It was when Keno Sports Complex (TEP) at that time was the White Sox were leaving to move to Phoenix, and at that time they hired us to run their youth program. The youth program is still running really strong, but it did not happen there. There ended up being a buyout at the end. But I got to spend a year with Jerry, and it's Jerry. He wouldn't. Mr. Reinsdorf was not what he chose to be called, and and his team, Tim Bazard and people like that. And what a master class in negotiation and business I picked up in 2008. I will forever be indebted to. They paid us handsomely. We
Yeah.
worked without a contract. I kept insisting it was not necessary. Everybody in the room was a lawyer except us, and we know a couple lawyers that are pretty high powered, but come on. And doing a little research on Jerry, I found out he was a really loyal guy, takes care of people long after a lot of times someone has passed away. He takes care of the family. And I'm like, I'm just willing to roll the dice. It just makes sense to me to play it out because these guys are big leaguers. And the money that we think about and the money they think about's got to be in a different stratosphere. And I will tell you, that was a good choice.
Yeah, it was a good
But it was
lesson too.
really, I mean, I also worked with Artie Moreno and the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
Oh.
I don't know if your birdie told you that either,
No.
but in 2005 we did the the reconstruction of Tempe Diablo Stadium, and I
Oh.
was on the field with Mickey Hatcher, a 1988 World Series champ. He was shagging fly balls behind us while the while the while the hitters were taking batting practice. I know they were aiming at us.
Did
But
they get you out there?
yeah, no, oh yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, I've signed autographs. I've been in places and people chase me down. And I'm like, well, who do you think I am? And I won't mention the names they said because I don't want to embarrass if those players are listening. I'm like, and I was probably 45 years older, so at the time, maybe even older than that. And I'm like, who do you think I am? And finally, at one point, I'm like, I'm gonna sign.
Yeah, just
Up
do it.
signed my name and PTL or something underneath it, and away we went. I'm a baseball guy from way back.
She's a baseball girl. I have no idea what you guys
Way
are talking
back. I
about.
love the game. I remember when we first moved to Tucson. Actually, that opened, baseball opened, probably every door that's been open for me since I moved to Tucson in 2002. When I moved here, I didn't want to go take a job. That was not something I was interested in. And I just sold a company and there was a couple bucks in the bank, and I'm like, what do I want to do with the next phase of my life? And I thought, everything has come and went, and styles and changes, but baseball is like almost sound like James Earl Jones was the one consistent from when I was a little kid. Like, I mean, my parents built us our own baseball diamond in the backyard. My brother and I had our own pitcher's mound backstop. They play with us. But so that's how I got started and met people like Rick Peralt, who led me to Jerry Reinsdorf, who led me to Artie Moreno. And that's just been really, I've experienced a lot of really cool things because of the game of baseball. Sat in a lot of owners' boxes and been to all-star games and because of my love for the game more than anything else. And if I can jump in here right now, I believe that is probably the most important thing in life, making your choices. What do you enjoy doing? What are you good at? What are your gifts? I've read the Bible numerous times. They talk about passion, and passion's really not in the Bible, but the word gift is in the Bible all the time. And so often I think, and I'm again, my hands up, we neglect our gifts a lot of times because they're easy. They might even be boring to us because they're so easy. And I would argue now, as an old man looking back on it, going, that young kids right there, lean into the stuff you're good at and that you enjoy.
That's great
Although I
advice.
don't buy the stuff that if you do the things you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I used to subscribe to that. And now it's like, no, it's the opposite. Because if you truly love something, you're going to bring your A game all
Yep.
the time. You want to
You
you
put
want to
all
be in the
in.
moment. You want to be all in. So,
It's gonna be blood, sweat, and tears.
but it just doesn't
Yeah.
it doesn't feel as much like work because if you're doing something you don't enjoy, that becomes a labor pretty
So,
quick.
speaking of that, did you ever have a time where you actually worked a 9 to 5? What were your jobs?
No, I really didn't.
Okay.
My parents, my mom, well, both of my parents, but my mom especially was an entrepreneurial spirit. Her brothers and sisters, most of them, unfortunately, most are gone. They were all entrepreneurs, owned successful, madly successful businesses. One of my uncles created, through McDonnell Douglas, he created all the welding equipment they use in outer space to build the space labs and stuff. Lee Flanagan was his name. He was just a so they. My mom comes from an entrepreneurial background, and my dad came from like bedrock, hardworking, a lot of kids and hardworking people. So that combination for me as a child growing up is I had like this great spiritual leader in my family, and then I had this great entrepreneurial leader in the family, and they worked together as like, I mean, it was. Yeah, I wish I could describe. I wish I could make a movie about how my parents interacted as a married couple and as a family because it was pretty powerful. I'm very proud of my three siblings. I'm the oldest of four. Every one of us. My one sister is a doctor. She teaches here at the university now. My other sister is a classically trained musician. My brother is an engineer, just retired. He's the first one to actually take that leap, and he works harder at being retired than he does at working. But so and that I don't think that's by. And if you notice, none of us are doing the same things.
No.
All of us have chosen different paths. And my little sister's 17 years younger, so that was almost like my parents raised two families because they almost had the older family grown, and then we had our little sister was born. But I don't think any of that's by accident. I think that's because of the foundation that we were all um, afforded, which is again, that's a gift. I didn't have anything to do with that. I don't remember if that was your original question or not, but
About jobs.
9 to 5, no,
No,
no.
you told me that you were a butcher at one point.
When my parents were, yeah, my mom got they bought a country grocery store, and my brother and I have thought about that. We were probably 14 and 15, but it seemed like maybe we were younger. But I remember helping them put together a walk-in cooler, and we bought the meat out of a company out of Tennessee called Real Foot Meat. I'll never forget that. And they'd bring in sides of beef. You've seen them in pictures, if not for real, and sides of beef, and they'd hang them in there in the locker. And my brother and my dad hired a butcher to come and teach us how to cut. We had the books, and we had band saws and electric saws and sharp. I mean, no OSHA was not involved, and we weren't by any means doing anything more dangerous than our peers that were driving tractors or baling hay, which is the toughest job I've ever done in my life. But yeah, we were cutting meat. We got paid 3 cents a pound, and I mean we were killing it here before we could legally drive. We'd make $100 in a week a piece. You can imagine. I mean, in today's economy, that'd be $700-800, and we
Yeah.
weren't driving cars. So and immediately then started. I couldn't work at the grocery shorts Sharps, so I would clean their meat department and then come to my parents' place and cut meat for them. And then in
How old were you?
I was at that time I was 16 because I
Oh,
was
okay.
driving by then. But yeah, I was cleaning a meat shop for Sharps. My brother cleaned. They had two stores. My brother cleaned one shop. I cleaned the other shop, and then we'd hustle back to our parents' place and actually cut meat for real. And then in the following year, I took a job at Martin's IGA, and I worked all night. I was still in high school, but I worked from 10 at night till 6 in the morning stocking shelves. And then after college, when I was going to college, I fell into a job. They made me the food and beverage director of a Best Western. I was like 19 years old. They were losing money like crazy, and I'll never forget it. I went in, and the place was just a mess, and they said, "Don't lose any money." That was kind of my only orders were, "Don't lose any money." So they called that evening, "How we do?" And I'm like, "We didn't lose any money." And they're like, "What'd you do?" I said, "We closed. I mean, we're going to start all over. We're going to clean this place up." And we started doing a fish fry on Friday night, and it was $5 for all you could eat. Keep in mind, this is 1978 or 79, and the place was packed. And so they would fly me around on the weekends to go to other places that had problems and go in there and try to clean the
Fix it
restaurants
up.
up for us. So no, I worked in real estate. I sold computers in my 20s, but I always had a side hustle or eight going on all the time because I like make money. I
Sure.
don't care about stacking it up and
That
all that, but
motto, "Don't lose money," really stuck.
yeah, it does. Yeah, well, that's the key.
Yeah.
Warren Buffett says that the key to investing is
Lose
don't lose your
money.
capital.
So, what was your experience, Clint, at the Southern Illinois University?
SIU Salukis.
Yes.
That was one of my. I made lifelong friends that I still talk to, and that was a really cool, unique experience. And it wasn't school itself. I remember a psych professor, someone saying, 80% of what you learn while you're here will be learned outside the classrooms. And I'd say it was probably 95%. You know, I mean, I was a good student, but I was more into, I was 18, 19, 20 years old, and again, had jobs that were moving me around and all over the place. But I worked at a place called the Gold Mine Pizza for a year and a half, and it was right next door to my apartment, which was right on the strip in Carbondale. And anybody that knows Carbondale knows that strip in the 70s and 80s was just, it was Playboy magazine's top party school in the United States at the time. But the group of people that I worked with at the Gold Mine Pizza were just, I mean, it was like a team. There were like 2 dozen of us, young college age students working there. And I mean, we played hard, we worked hard. We were almost like a band of gypsies, the 24, not always together, but that hardcore group was. So when you mentioned that and asked me that question, you probably noticed I smiled great big because I have really fond memories of that time for
And
me.
you studied business.
I studied business, actually accounting and business,
Okay.
and I couldn't do that for anybody else. I could not be an accountant for anybody else. But it served me well in my personal life and business life for me.
Who is the most influential person in your life and why?
It's two people, and it's my parents. And it's my dad never missed a PTA meeting, baseball game, piano recital. And again, his kids were spread out 17 years. He never missed one. My mom obviously never missed one either. It's just a way. When you're growing up and you're in that environment, you don't know anything other than that. But looking back at it now, through the lens of time and seeing how life really is, I was so blessed to just have two people that love their kids and love God and love their families. And my mom has such a servant's heart today. We lost our dad on Father's Day of 27 years ago, and his memory is strong. And I've also been blessed. I would be neglect to not mention two other people, male role models that blessed me. I knew a guy named Dick Clemens. He's no longer with us, and I met him at work. He was about my age now, so there was a 30-year gap. He and my father were roughly the same age. They never met, but my mom later met Dick and was good friends with him. But he and I became really buddies. He didn't have any sons. He had daughters, but he didn't have any sons. My father had just passed. I wasn't looking for a surrogate. He wasn't looking for a surrogate son, and yet we played that role for each other for a number of years. And he and my wife and I started our first photography company was with Dick Clemens. And the first person that when my kid broke his elbow was Dick Clemens. And so I had an incredible role model, male, older figure in my life after I lost my father. And then we moved to Tucson, and my mother remarried a gentleman named George Schulte, and he played that role again. And just it, George, the story's out now. I've told this before, but George invented the Post-it note. He worked for 3M. He was vice president of the epoxy division. And the crazy thing is, I told that Post-it note story for years, not knowing who the players or anybody involved was. I mean, for years, from the 70s through the time that I met George, which would have been the early 21st century. I don't remember. They got married in 2002, so somewhere in there. And I got to spend then the following, George passed away in 2017. So I got to spend the next 16, 17, 18 years with the creator of a story that I'd been telling for like 25 years without knowing any of the players involved. Now I know the whole story. And you know how it started? You know how
How?
Post-it notes were invented? This
How?
is a really cool story, too. Number one, 3M always encourages all their staff, everybody that works for 3M, they encourage them to do on clock, on paid studying, producing new stuff, creating new stuff. And 2/3 of all the stuff that 3M sells today, and they were created in 1903, but 2/3 of the stuff they sell is new and improved, 5 years old or newer. They keep improving. They're a conglomerate. When you look them in the market, they're not in with everybody else. They're off in a separate group by themselves. I think there's 14 conglomerates because you don't know how do you classify 3M. But anyway, it was at church, and I can't name the church right now. Um, but they were all going to church in the Twin Cities, which is where 3M's at, Minneapolis, St. Paul. And they were all in the choir. A lot of these guys that were working at 3M were in the choir together, and they wanted to mark their hymnals so they'd know where their songs were for this Sunday. And George was running the epoxy division, and so they said, "What if we put a little?" And if he were here, he'd throw the, and it's epoxy, not glue, by the way. I was corrected on that. It's epoxy, and it was A17B11, and they put a little dab of that on a little piece of yellow paper, and so therefore the Post-it note was invented. And then they couldn't sell them. Nobody knew what they were. It was such a foreign item. So the CEO at the time's name was McKnight. And he said to them, "Well, how many have you given away?" And they were like, "Well, none." And he's like, "Well, here's what we need to do. Run a full batch, make them up, take them to every secretary that we can get to, and give it to them. And on the back page, show them how to order more."
Thank goodness they invented Post-its. I went all through high school, U of A, being a receptionist.
So,
Post-its.
They're
Clint,
so cool.
your
Yeah.
stepdad invented the
George
Post-it.
Schulte with Art Fry and a
So
gentleman named Silver. Yeah, I spend that money pretty regular. Now, for the record, they were employees. They did not get they didn't share in the patent,
Yeah.
but they were all rewarded with stocks.
So, how important, Clint, is finding the right partner and
Oh,
spouse for your life, just in general?
in,
Tell us about Tammy.
yeah, my best friend. My best friend, and for a long, and I'm not really joking about this, for a long time, my only friend. Really, I'm a friendly guy. I always had friends and friendly. But when we were, and I didn't meet Tammy till I was 33 years old.
Wow, okay.
Uh, we were so busy building our life together and raising a family and taking care of them and doing everything we could. We were friendly with people, don't get me wrong, but I discovered real quick people that are your so-called friends, for example, they want to borrow money, they want to cry on your shoulder when things are bad at home, and they want you to help them move. And I'm not really interested. I've done all those things for a lot of people, but I'm not really interested in that. I don't want to be that person. I mean, I'll help you. I'll help you for sure, but I don't. So for a long time, I would say to Tammy, you're my best friend, and you're my only friend. That's not true anymore. I've noticed over the last 5 or 6 years, I'm surrounded by so many, and I'm looking at two of them right here. And no, I'm looking at four of them right here. I'm surrounded primarily with a bunch of young people. Many of the people that I would consider some of my best friends, I'm old enough to be their grandfather. But think of the story I just told about my dad, Dick Clemens, and George Schulte. And one day, a few years ago, I woke up and I went, "Well, I've become my dad. I've become Dick. I've become George." Without even thinking about the role as it evolved to who I am now, I became that person. And I became that person naturally because if you could have met these three gentlemen, you would go, "Oh my gosh, Clint's the luckiest guy I've ever met."
That's amazing that you have the male role models.
Yeah,
I
I
think
did.
I think it forms a person.
And I don't want to get crazy here now, but that's what we're missing right now. I've
That's
been
what
on a
I've been
big,
saying.
I've been on to the guys I know. I'm going to leave the ladies out. I'll share this with you, and I'm not been sharing this with my wife or my mother or my sister or Nareda, I've not really, well, Nareda gets a little bit of it because she's around here a lot. But our biggest, I hold men accountable for all the problems in the world right now. We got help along the way. You ladies helped us, but I'm telling you, and I don't mean that
But
as
it's
a,
something about like the male on male mentoring each other. It's
I,
different than a
hey,
woman
stay at home with your
mentoring.
family.
Yeah.
You know, we have 1 out of 4 families right
Mm.
now that do not have a male figure in the home. Unacceptable. That is completely unacceptable. I mean, I love my kids. I'm proud of my children. I wanted to spend this. We never had a babysitter. We never went any. Honestly, we never went anywhere that we couldn't. Did we never have a babysitter? I remember a couple times we had things we had to do. Maybe my mom watched them. One of Tammy's friends I know watched them a couple times. But I mean, as far as babysitters, matter of fact, we made the conscious choice when we had Hayden, when Hayden was born, our oldest, he's 29 now. We did the math. Tammy was a school teacher. We did the math, and it made no sense for her to go get a job and work outside the home. Once we did the math, it made no sense. We were working for the daycare. And then Jordan came along a couple of years later. Well, now we've got 2 kids, and you keep in mind that's all close to 30 years ago. But I forget what the numbers were. But it was like insane. I'm like, you're not even making money. Even a teacher salary, which is pretty decent, it's by the time you get done with extra cars and insurance and clothing and work and gas and you're dropping your kids off with somebody that is never going to love them the way you do. I mean, let's just face reality. That's just reality of it. Um, she stayed at home and started a preschool, and it was a preschool. It wasn't a daycare. It was a preschool. Everything was in order and timely and I forget she had 4, 5, 6 kids that she kept whatever she could take, and a lot of them kids we raised them, uh, because their parents were busy but it was choices that we made. And you talked about the team and working together. That was a team effort. Those were conversations that we had to have um, to arrive at that choice. And then we had other but back to Tammy real quick, my best friend, without it, there's no question. And think about this: we lived together, we worked together, we carpooled together, and we're almost 31 years, and we pretty much have the whole time, other than a couple of times when I was working with the White Sox and traveling, or one of my other, um, one of the other gigs that we started, I was gone some.
What's the secret?
Being honest with each other, knowing what each other's strengths are. There are certain things in our life that I don't have anything to do with it because I just implicitly trust her. And there are other things in our life that she has nothing to do with. We keep each other informed. We talk about it. But the real secret, carpool together. I mean, you're trapped in the car, in our case, for 40 minutes at a time, twice, 20 minutes twice a day. So, and the radio is usually, if it's playing, playing something mellow, and
You guys
we're
are
talking to
together a
each other. We
lot.
are
You
together
are.
a lot. Now we text each other at home or holler across the house, but
Going back to being a father, what are some traits that you think make a decent father?
loving their mother is the first thing. Loving God, probably, I guess, is the first thing. And but loving my mom always said, love your wife and show your kids that you care for her. I think that's number one. So we're a team. We're working together. Um, love them. I mean, I chose to have them. They're my. I mean, I love both of them dearly. Um, I've never been anything but their biggest cheerleader. I always tell them that. There's no one else in my life that I can honestly say that I haven't maybe went, you're gonna get yours someday, right? Can we all agree with that? Your spouse, your mother, your siblings, the world, people you work with. But my children, it was never that. It was never that. I always, they're 20, 29 and 27. I want nothing but the best for them. And I'm going to give you a real quick story about our daughter who is married. She never had a boyfriend. All of her friends had boyfriends growing up, and there were times, and I'm like, hey, you know what? You just need to concentrate on you, being the best, have boyfriends, but you don't need it's okay to have one, but you don't need one to get to be complete with your life. Be yourself first, and then you'll so, and I know there were times that she was probably sad about that. She has got the best husband. You couldn't ask for a better son-in-law. You could not ask for a better husband than my son-in-law, Derek. He is just an awesome guy. He loves her. He's crazy about her. Joe this, Joe that. What's Joe want to do? And he impressed me like right out of the gate because he's like, "What would your dad do?"
What would Clint do?
Yeah,
That's a good question. So,
yeah.
what life advice do you give your children?
I've given this to them from day one.
What is
From
it?
day one, by the time they got to school, Tammy was back teaching again. So my schedule then adjusted so I could make sure I got them kids to school. I was running a trucking company out of our home, so that allowed me the privilege to do that. When they went to school, every day I said the following three things to them: learn something new, be nice to everybody, and have fun. Because I believe if you've learned something new, you've been nice to everybody, and you've had fun, you've had a full day. You've had a real full day. And then when they got a little bit older, to keep it real, about once a week, I would do those three, and then I'd say, and look, life ain't fair, so you got to get over it. That's just to keep it real.
Mhm.
There's nobody here really other than your mother and your father that really are going to, I mean, I don't want to broad stroke this. Obviously, that's a stretch, but at the end of the day, nobody's really here to help or serve you. You got to take care of it yourself. Then when they got older, it was like, remember who you are and represent what that is. Because you're representing all of us when you're out. Now they say to me, "Hey, Dad, remember who you are and represent us."
Cosa Nostra.
Costa Nostra. They know that movie. They know that my kids. I heard Tammy. She was talking to Jaden, our new guy over here. I just love him. Jaden and I've been serving on the tech team at church for the last couple of years, so I've got to know him. And he's now with us over here too. And Tammy was sharing some of the things that we've done with our children as they were younger. Every Saturday night was dance night. Every Saturday night, popcorn, grill outside, and we'd turn Jimmy Buffett on, and we would just party. Now we had other parties with neighbors and stuff, but I mean every Saturday night, without fail, it was dance night at our, from the time they were little until the time they no longer wanted to dance with their parents, and then they just brought their friends over. By then we lived here, and we'd wake up Saturday mornings and there'd be 25 kids in our house.
Do you have any funny dad stories for us or
Mm.
memories of your children?
I probably do. I can't think of any right now. But yeah, it's all been a lot of fun. So I can't think of a specific one, but
Uh-huh.
yeah.
And are your kids involved with the businesses?
Our son is very involved. Our daughter is not. She's following her mother's footsteps. She teaches at St. Gregory's, and really doesn't want anything to do with that part of it. Although when they were young, they had no choice.
Yeah.
When they were all 14, 15, 16, all of them and all their friends. We've had 200 of the friends come through here over the
My
years.
husband's just waiting for our son to be old
Yeah.
enough to
Oh,
put
yeah.
him to work. He's just like
Absolutely.
counting
Well,
down
he's
the
old
minutes.
enough. I'm looking at him. There's a few things he can do.
He does wipe down some tables at the
Well,
restaurant.
yeah. See, you
he
can
can
always
do
find
it.
age appropriate
Yeah.
thing for these kids to do.
So, what are your top 3 tips for starting a business?
That's a great question. That is a great question. I'd say number one, and I alluded to it earlier, make sure you're doing something you really enjoy, and you know what you're and you know. I mean, you're not gonna know nearly enough, okay? And you're not gonna have enough money, and you're gonna be woefully prepared. But if you're doing something that you care passionately about, and it needs to be big, you need to start something that's going to keep your interest at a high level. Mediocre is not going to do that. So Casey Kasem. You're probably too young to remember him, but he say keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. So keep it real, but stretch as far as you can. And Zig Ziglar used to say, go as far as you can go, and when you get there, you'll see you can go further. So I would say, do something you love. Um, be prepared to do it for a long time. Back to and I'll give you the third one then real quick. Watch the money. I don't care if it's pennies. Watch it. Because you got to keep that capital to keep moving. Uh, Back to the 3M story real quick about being in it for the long haul. So number two there was, being in it for the long haul. 3M started in 1903. Do you know what 3M stands for? Something we all think about. We know 3M by their logos, and they're everywhere. But 3M officially stands for Minnesota Manufacturing and Mining Company. 3M. That's what it really means. And they made sandpaper. And they started in Battle Creek, Michigan, which is where the quarry was, that they could get the right grade of whatever that material is for the sandpaper. But they didn't actually become a real successful company and start really like doing things on a bigger scale till 1920, 1921, 1922. So it took them 20 years to actually build that company up to where it actually had a value to it. Amazon was 20 years in the making, and of course we all remember what they started. Do you remember what they started? What Amazon was?
Books in a garage.
Yeah, but it took them 20 years before they actually turned a profit. Money was made. There was people being paid, but actual money showing a profit, it took them 20 years. So starting a business, and I encourage, and you know what? Fail quick, fail fast, move on to the next one.
Don't dwell.
Don't dwell. I mean, I've had to shipwreck a few. It's like I could maybe salvage a little bit of stuff, but the salvage is going to be too labor intensive. It might hurt too much, or might just walk away from it and move on.
What does Tammy say when you start a new business? When you're like, we're starting a podcast network.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's a great story, and I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to get into the story, but you can find it in the LTD uh, media portion, Live the Dream portion of our podcast, and it's called Acres of Diamonds. And it's Acres of Diamonds, 2 parts. It's a real short. I mean, the total between the 2 parts is probably not more than 5 or 6 minutes. But Tammy is always Acres of Diamonds. Long story short, a gentleman was looking for diamonds after selling his farm in the Middle East. Went out looking for diamonds, couldn't find any, ran out of money, and jumped into the sea and perished. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the guy that bought the farm picked up a great big rock out of the creek, put it on the mantle. It was diamonds. It was Golconda Mine, the biggest mining company ever. And it was in Al Hafs was the guy's name. It was in his backyard all that time.
Wow.
And so I closed that episode by saying, and thanks to my bride, Tammy, a shout out to her for always encouraging me to dig holes, and a lot of times digging holes with me, because you just never know. She trusts me after all this time, and she's an entrepreneurial spirit. It's a different thing. She is. I hate to say it this way, but she is a machine when it comes to work. She's a problem solver, and so our relationship, not unlike my parents' relationship, the roles have changed. I'm the entrepreneurial spirit, whereas my dad wasn't. But l- leaders have a vision. People that are true leaders are visionaries. My dad was a visionary, by the way. It was uncanny the ability he had to and it was, I think, because you're in tune with what's going on around you. It's not real hard to predict stuff when you've seen it play out before, and you can see that we're heading there again. But um, managers then take the visionaries pro and create processes to make those things work. And most people are not capable of being both, and I'm certainly not one of those. I'm more an idea. I can work. Don't get me wrong. I have a work ethic that I can pretty much, if that's my goal, I'll outwork anybody in the room, because I can. I know I can. But that's really not my strong suit. My strong suit is to look for opportunities or see gaps in systems and try to exploit them, try to take advantage of them. And I mean in a wholesome way. I don't mean in a negative way.
What does living the dream mean to you?
That is so cool. That again has a story. When we were running up the prior company here called Top Tunes Rocks, we were doing music and stuff, and we realized real quickly the music industry has dramatically changed. It's owned by three conglomerates. It's almost. I'm not discouraging anybody in the music profession. Keep living your dream. But I would sign all group documents, either PTR, which is pound the rock. I'm big into which blow broke the rock. Well, all of them. It took every one of them to break. There's a great poem it's called "The Stonecutter's Credo," and I would encourage all of you to listen to that. I'm gonna read it. It is really really cool, and it's a long thing, but how the stonecutter has the power. But so um, but the other one I would always use would be LTD with an exclamation point. Live the dream. Live the dream. And if you're living the dream, that's why we have some, we don't have a lot of rules around here with live the dream, but one of them is if it's not positive or uplifting, then we'll have to find another place to play that because you can't live the dream if you're dwelling in the negative all the time. Hey, it's okay to point something out. I'm not saying you can't. And I'm gonna tell you where David got me straight not too long ago. I wanted to do an episode on inflation. It's important. This is an important topic that we're talking about, but we chose not to because, again, everybody knows it exists. There are a lot more talented and more educated people than myself to discuss it. So we let it go. I was like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I could dwell on this for an hour, but I don't know that there would really be any positive outcome, and unless people's behaviors change, and words are not going to change behaviors. Only action's going to do that.
Give us your best piece of financial advice.
Keep the capital so you can keep investing.
Okay.
And don't forget when the tide goes out, you find out who's been swimming naked. And we've discovered that a few times in my life that there was a bunch of people that were it was all fake. So the best financial advice I can give you is something a lot of people use now. I know Jay-Z and different people like this use it. Pay cash for everything. Now, let me qualify that. My daughter and Derek bought a home a few years ago. Nice, beautiful starter home. I mean, my goodness, starter homes have went up in quality and price since I was buying starter homes. That's a little different because of interest rates. So you factor that in when you're paying 2% interest. Hey, don't worry about paying that off in a big time. Yeah, get it. It's great to not have a mortgage. Trust me, that's a cool thing. But when money's free, you have to take a different strategy. When I was selling real estate back in the 80s, interest rates were 18%. And when I say that to some of the younger people now, they're like, "What?" I'm like, 18%. You thought you were doing something well if you got a 10 or 11 or 12%. When it went to 8, oh my gosh, this is free money. Now it's up a little now, but 2, 3%. Find other ways to invest your money. Always invest in something you know, something you understand. Don't get involved. I watch the Money Channel religiously with the sound down. I don't need to hear what everybody's opinion on this
You
stuff
just
is.
want to
I
see the
want the
numbers.
facts. And that's actually how I get all my news. I don't watch news. I haven't watched TV news in 20 years.
Good for you.
It's
Yeah.
garbage, it's slop, it's propaganda. I'm sorry. And you pick a side, but it's still the same. So I'm not interested. Watch the money. If
So,
you see where the money's at and where it's going, you're going to find out what the news is.
so with that said, do you have any stocks that you currently have your eye on?
No.
No.
There's a statement in the industry. I mean, I've been involved in stocks. I bought my first stock 45 years ago. Um, I've been in the market for 45 years in some form. I was a day trader in 9 and 10. Great time to jump in. I happened to jump in March 9th, 2009. That was the day the market recovered. No one knew that till months later. It was 6,700 today. Even though the market's down, it's 30 over 30, 32. It was 6 in 2009. That was easy money. That was robbing a bank kind of stuff. Just walk in, walk out, make a few $100, make a few $1,000. Um, but there's an old saying in the market. There's two of them, and I'm going to drop them on you right now. Pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. In other words, don't get greedy. Don't get greedy. And two, sell in May. Today's the last day of May. Sell in May and go away. Just skip the summer. There's no value. The market's just going to, it's not going to do, if anything, it'll go down. It's not going to come up this summer. But come Labor Day, when we all get back to school and summer's over, then I'll revisit it. But I always just kind of do the same thing because I know what those things. When I was trading, I mean, there are literally thousands of stocks to watch. I picked like 5 or 6 out. At the time, it was the banks because the banks were getting all the money, and so I was buying banks, and I'd hold them for 20 or 30 or 40 minutes, and then I mean, you got to buy a lot at one time to make it worth your while, but you buy a couple thousand shares of something, and it goes up 20 cents, you made yourself a couple bucks.
You had told me about the Netflix stock
Yeah,
where you got
and
in early.
and it crapped. It just totally crapped out. Netflix, when I jumped in, was 180 because I'm looking and I'm like, Netflix is everywhere.
Hmm.
Maybe I should buy some of this. So I moved a bunch of stock from some old blue chip stuff, and there were people questioning my sanity at the time. They're like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" It went to 600
Wow.
in short. I mean, like a couple of years. Today it's back to 180.
Should we
S-
buy? We should probably buy.
I'm not buying anything right now. I wouldn't
Okay.
buy. Right now, honestly, the best advice I could give anybody right now is we're in it's a churn right now. I'd clear the election before I did anything of real. You know who you need to invest in? Yourselves.
Hmm.
Always the first investment is in yourself. Here's how Tammy and I have operated. This is principles. Dave Ramsey, a lot of people use this. First 10% we make, we give to it's donated to some something, church, non for profits. People, be careful about non for profits. By the way, make sure they're really do your homework on that. Um, the next 10% we worked hard for it. That's ours. We're going to live on 80%. That's always been a philosophy we used from day one. We still use it every day. If you can squeeze a little more in that, go for it. But I would say 10, 10, and 80. You do because compound interest is the greatest, according to Carnegie, is the greatest way to make money ever. I mean, I've seen his handwriting there at Carnegie Hall. Can you imagine my excitement when I discovered compound interest? And I asked a kid that used to work for me one time. I said, "Hey," called him by name. "Hey, can you explain compound interest?" He goes, "Yeah, if you give me a whiteboard." And I'm like, "You have no clue." And for anybody that isn't willing right now as a listener or anybody that doesn't know, compound interest is interest on interest. Interest on interest. That's the best way to make money.
It's an effortless way to grow your money.
It is. Now you got to be there's a discipline. You got to be prepared. You got to know what you're doing. You got to buy things that compound. I mean, if you just go buy, stay away from flash in the pans. If you're going to do that, bet on yourself again. It's back to your money. You've got more opportunity to grow that than maybe that next guy.
So Father's Day is coming up, and do you have any gift ideas for the fathers out there, or an ideal way to spend the day?
Yeah. Yeah. But again, mine's going to be really simple. It's not going to be material. It's going to be write your dad a letter, write your dad a heartfelt. Depending on again age appropriate. Maybe you draw a red heart and say I love you, dad, or something. But right, I guarantee the things that are meaningful to me are are actions than another tie. I mean, my kids know better than to get another tie. I've I've got 800 of them. So if you guys ever need to buy or I'll tell you, I've got them. No, just be if you can. If you're fortunate enough to be able to be with your father, be with your father.
What will you be doing?
I'll be eating. I'll be eating somewhere with my kids, and I don't know. They'll let me pick it out, so it'll be somewhere pretty. I'm not into. I've eaten at some of the most exclusive restaurants. I've eaten off of food trucks. I have no preference. If I'm with the right people, I don't care. I'll eat a hot dog just as quick as I will a prime rib. I do like shrimp though a lot. So it'll be fish related probably. I do like shrimp.
So, Clint, what does a day in your life look like? What time are you getting up? What are you having for breakfast? What time do you get here?
Yeah.
Give us the
I
details.
like that. Good. This is a pretty typical day. Sundays are a little different, but I get up about 6 o'clock. I spend a little time with my dogs. Just they need a little. I got a big one, and a little one. They need a little attention and prodding to go outside. A cup of coffee sometimes for breakfast. Jump in the shower, shave real quick, and head down here. Tammy and I have our strategy usually already in place of what our day is going to be. And I'm very lucky. I just get to bounce all over the place. I get to work in the bakery some. I get to cater some. I get to do some of this. I get to create content. Uh, I'm leaving this, doing a meeting as soon as we're done with this. We're starting to rebook the room out here. We got an incredible young talented band coming in. I'm gonna be spending some time with them. Um, get home. I like reading. I read probably 3 4 hours every day.
Wow.
I'll watch a ball game. There won't be anything probably on tonight. The Cubs suck right now, so I'm watching the Angels with Mike Trout and those guys. But a baseball game will be on somewhere in the background, and I'll be reading and planning tomorrow.
What are your top 3 books?
This is a hard one,
I know.
and yet it's an easy one. It's a really hard one in the respect that I have been reading since I could read. I mean, I can see myself now as a kid with the newspaper, and my mom thought I was making it up until I read to her. Um, but the books, my three favorite books, without a doubt, are the Bible, Zig Ziglar, "See You at the Top," and Napoleon Hill, "Think and Grow Rich."
Good ones.
I love all three of those. They're and again, but this is where it gets hard. I could take anything by John Maxwell and leadership and put it in that list. The Godfather. We spent 5 10 minutes at the top of this episode talking about The Godfather. Obviously, a game changer. But in the real sense of the word, I would, if you've never read See You at the Top, Zig Ziglar, you got to read it. It's just such a basic, commonsensical approach to life. And Zig Ziglar's story is so powerful. His own story is so powerful. And I had the opportunity to meet Zig Ziglar, spend a little one-on-one time with him at Casas Church up here back in about 2003. He was towards the end of his life. I've got pictures and the autograph and bought some personal stuff from him. And just a really just great guy, great backstory. And then Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. You got to read that one if you haven't. It's one of the most powerful books. um, it took Napoleon Hill 30 years to write the book. Actually, longer, but he published his first volume of Think and Grow Rich. And he talked to, and it was primarily guys, but he talked to all the power brokers of that era, the early 20th century. And he spent 20 years, no money. Carnegie backed him, but he was other than just being, what's the word I'm looking for, sponsoring him. He wasn't making any money. He was just interviewing these people, and Carnegie had set him up with the right people to interview and talk to former presidents and leaders of industry and business owners and all this. And the names just go on and on when you look at the who's who in that list. And he goes so deep in every chapter. But think about the title. If you never even crack the book, Think and Grow Rich. And he does not necessarily mean in a material manner. That's part of it. I have the great line from Zig Ziglar is people, because I talk about money a lot, and people have challenged me over the years, like, "Hey, how can you, with your beliefs and your spirituality, how do you?" I'm like, "Well, the good Samaritan in the Bible couldn't have helped that old boy out if he hadn't have made some money first. He took care of his needs. He paid the hospital and said, when I come back, if I owe you more, I'm going to pay you more." And they said, "Well, but the Bible says." I'm like, "Well, I don't know where you read that." Because the Bible says the love of money is the root of all evil. It doesn't say money is. Money's just to money. I've said this probably to you before, Marielle. We've talked about it. I probably haven't said it to you, Selena. But the reality is, money is a tool.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a carpenter, you need hammers and saws and nails and planes and all that stuff. If you're a doctor, you need the tools of the trade. As broadcasters, we need tools of the trade. That money allowed this to happen. So I wouldn't say the first negative thing about money. My wife has never, ever once came to me and said, "Honey, I'm gonna have to change clothes because what I'm wearing don't match what you're carrying." Never happened. So don't talk evil. Don't talk
Mm-hmm.
bad about money. And have you ever noticed the people that talk bad about money the most are the ones that are working the hardest to try to get it? And I'm like, well,
It's a lack mentality.
it's a game changer in your. It's how you look at stuff by
Mhm.
being in tune with what your real surroundings
It's
are.
a
As it
perception.
is.
Mm-hmm.
I look at money like energy. Currency is energy and it has to flow in order to grow.
That's why we have growth.
Hmm.
That's why I'm a pro growth person in all. Hey, control. Don't be stupid. Make sure the growth is uh, extends what you're at. I mean, but you got to constantly be evolving because, like you just said, the energy and the movement of that energy is what creates
Right?
positive growth. Or, I mean, negative growth comes from that too, but we're not going to get into that because we're into the positive
And
scenes.
Think and Grow Rich is just such a great book. It's probably in my top 5 as well.
Yeah,
And it's more than money, it is about mindset, I
it is.
think.
It's all mindset.
So,
Because if you've got the right mindset, you're going to have all that you need. Again, I'm going to go back to the scriptures, our daily. Lord, give us today our daily bread. It doesn't talk about let's stockpile this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's okay to have a little extra, don't get me wrong, but I'm just talking about most times I can't change yesterday at all. There's nothing I can do. I could correct some things from yesterday, but I can't change yesterday. I have very little influence on tomorrow's outcome, but I believe strongly in I'm in control of right now.
Present.
Right now, I'm in control of my movements and my actions and my behaviors right now. And, to be the person that I think we all aspire to be, what do we need to do? We need to think more about what we're doing. I've challenged people. I've said, look, I spend a lot of time quiet, a lot of time quiet. Get in your car and go head off somewhere and don't turn the radio on. I said that to a guy not too long ago. He goes, well, that ain't going to happen. I'm like, 15 minutes. I
Mm-hmm.
challenge you to spend 15 minutes alone. And what better way to do it really than in a car? You can't go anywhere.
it gets uncomfortable to sit in silence for
Try
too
it.
long.
Try it. 15 minutes.
I love it.
You do it?
Yeah, but I'm the oldest.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to have quiet.
Yeah. Yeah. Quiet is good.
Yeah.
I don't want to be quiet all the time. I
No,
like to hear people and chatter
but it
and
has
noise.
value.
It has a lot of value. I think, again, back to a lot of our ills and stuff, I think if we took
Yeah.
15 minutes
It's like
just
meditation. That's why there's
thinking,
these great people that sit in silence and just let their mind
and it's
flow.
okay. You don't have
Yeah.
to be thinking
You don't
deep
have to
thoughts
think
all the time.
anything,
No, think
but something
nothing.
creative might come up, something
Matter of fact, out
inspiring.
of boredom, a lot of times comes
Hmm.
great ideas.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and we're at the end of the episode,
It
but
went
we'd like
fast, didn't
to
it?
pimp you out.
Uh,
So tell the viewers where they can find you or learn a little more about you and your investments.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm Clint Peek on Facebook. There's Copper Creek Cookies, Fresh Catering, LTD Media, Top the Other Place, Local Marana, which is a rapidly growing Facebook group that we've started, Local Tucson, another one. a place for small businesses and the community to come together and share ideas and thoughts and special deals your businesses may have.
Cool. We want to thank you, Clint, for
Well,
coming
it's
on.
my, it's my pleasure.
Thank
trust
you
me.
so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.